Hello, this is Angelia, and you are watching or listening to the podcast Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to try and maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time, excuse me, we had left off talking about identity versus identity confusion. That when you start heading out of your teens, that is a little thing you're going to have to navigate. You're going to have to decide who you are and who you're not. So we're going to take up on that. Identity forms as young people resolve three major issues. I'm going to get this little thing out of the way of my microphone here. The choice of an occupation, my tongue. So you got to decide what kind of work you're going to do, what you're going to do for a living. The adoption of values to believe in and live by. So, you've probably heard values from the parents, grandparents, society at large, different parts of it. And you have to decide your own values. What do you believe? And, that will change over time as you grow and learn more, hopefully. And the development of a satisfying sexual identity. So you have to decide who you are sexually, whether you're hetero, homo, bi. Personally, I know that there's a lot of sexualities nowadays. Medically speaking, psychologically speaking, okay, but basically, the top three, homo, hetero, bi. You either like the opposite sex, same sex, or both is fine, or none. And then all the others are kind of spin-offs of those. And just don't argue with me if you don't agree with that. You got your own little opinions, I know. During the crisis of middle childhood, that of industry versus inferiority. Children acquire skills needed for success in their culture. And remember, we said all cultures are different. What is prized in one culture might not be prized in another culture. They might not like that in their culture. So it's the setting that you're in, your identity in that setting. And people move all around the world, and what was your identity in this might not be over here my viable identity. So things change as you grow older. Now, as adolescents, they need to find ways to use these skills. So you've learned stuff to this point in your late adolescence, and now you need to kind of compile it, collate it, make an outline. How are you going to use all this stuff that you learned? Because a lot of times schools don't tell you that. Like I said, I've sat with young people and say, what was your best subject in school? What did you like to do? All right, how can you use that? What do you want to do with that? Because what you're good at is usually what you like the most. When young people have trouble settling on an occupational identity, or when the opportunities are artificially limited, as they were for Jackie Robinson and his friends because of prejudice, they are at risk of behavior with serious negative consequences, such as criminal activity or early pregnancy. If he would have not been allowed to play because of his race, he would have probably been a hoodlum. He admitted that. He said that. And for a girl, it might mean engaging in sexual activity probably younger than they should have. During the psychosocial moratorium, or the timeout period that adolescence provides, that's a period from, being a child to being an adult. You get, about 9 years in the middle there where you're learning and growing and learning how to have relationships. So that's the big jump there from childhood to adulthood. Many young people search for commitments to which they can be faithful. Now, be that, a religious belief system, what your values are, who you're going to love, and what you want to do with your life. These youthful commitments may shape a person's life for years to come, because usually we start out doing what we want to do, and that usually kind of dictates where you're going to go in life. Jackie Robinson's commitments were to develop his athletic potential and to help improve the position of African Americans in society, and he definitely did that. The extent to which young people remain faithful to commitments, as Robinson did, influences their ability to resolve the identity crisis. So, if you really believe in something and you stick to it, you're going to come out better. Versus, there are people who are really, really vulnerable to peer pressure. And they let other people talk them out of the life that they want and into the life that they want for them. And I've told people this, some of my life coaching clients before, you need to take charge of your life, because if you don't, somebody else will. You can't just sit there and be a bump on a log or expect everyone to take care of you. You need to make a decision to do something and then do that. Adolescents who satisfactorily resolve that crisis develop the virtue of fidelity, sustained loyalty, faith, or a sense of belonging to a loved one or to friends and companions. So, you're looking for where do you fit in, there was actually a Christian singer years ago who did My Place in This World, and people kind of got on him, you shouldn't want to play. Y'all jerks. But, because that's what we need to find out. What is our place in the world? What are we going to do with our life? Who are we going to be? Fidelity also can mean identification with a set of values, an ideology, a religion, a political movement, a creative pursuit, or an ethnic group. And you can identify with all of these things. We all have values, and you got to decide what ones stick to you. Ideology, what do you believe? What do you not believe? Religion, most people have some. A lot of people don't have any. So, it just depends. A political movement, and that's what it is, a movement. If you look throughout history, there have always been political movements one way or another. A lot of them are just gone. They don't exist anymore. So don't get too attached to those. Keep yourself straight and know what you believe in, because if you're just hopping on a bandwagon of a political movement, you might end up going somewhere on that wagon you don't necessarily want to be. And creative pursuit, we all, like to create. Most of us like to create. Some people don't. They just say, hey, I'm not into it. Or your ethnic group. Now, for people like me who are multi-ethnic, that's a little harder, but I like all of my ethnicities, and that's why I say whenever I hear something I don't like, especially from anyone in my immediate family, I remind them that you can't be prejudiced against anybody, because basically, then you're prejudiced against yourself, because, you have ancestors from this, that, and the other place. And now that we're doing more and more DNA work, and we see most everyone's got that sprinkling from the old countries, so that's just silly. If you're prejudiced, it's just ignorant, and you're silly, and you shouldn't do it. Self-identification emerges when young people choose values and people to be loyal to, rather than simply accepting their parents' choices. Now, there are people who just do accept their parents' choices. I grew up with some people like that. But individually, you need to make choices for yourself. Now, if that's your choice, is to accept your parents' choices, then that is a choice. But now, if you just blindly, accept because that's what they said, then you're not thinking for yourself. And everyone should be thinking for themselves, because times change, places change, people change, everything changes, and you need to kind of know where you are in time and what is best for you at any given point in time. Fidelity is an extension of trust, and you can't have relationships without trust. In infancy, it is important for trust of parents to outweigh mistrust. So, as a baby, you got to trust the parents more than you mistrust them. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and that doesn't have good outcomes. In adolescence, it becomes important to be trustworthy oneself. So you realize that it's important for you to be trustworthy. If you're dishonest, if you're lying, chances are a lot of people are not going to like you. You can fall into a clique of other people who are crooked, as the word is, and most of them do, like kind of hang out. Birds of a feather flock together, as the saying goes. In addition, adolescents are now extend their trust to mentors or loved ones. So they're looking at people, like teachers, counselors, people who might be teaching them something in the community. And then the ever important in adolescence, girlfriend or boyfriend. In sharing thoughts and feelings, an adolescent clarifies a tentative identity by seeing it reflected in the eyes of the beloved. So, that's important to them, is to bounce their selfness off on, people that they love, and to see that that person accepts them as that. And that's a big thing in a relationship too. Acceptance goes right after trust. You might have a partner, as I've had in the past, excuse my little itchy here, who doesn't accept you for who you are. And that relationship is not going to work out, because you need to accept other people for who they are. I've accepted my husband with all his little foibles. Do I get mad sometimes? Yes. Yes. But you have to accept other people as the people that they are. Otherwise, you can't be in a relationship with them. Unless you just want to fight constantly. However, these adolescent intimacies differ from mature intimacy, which involves greater commitment, sacrifice, and compromise. So, in mature intimacy, when you're in a relationship, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a partner type relationship, but there has to be commitment. You have to commit to being in that relationship, because it's not always easy. And if you're going to bail the first sign of trouble, then you're not going to have a relationship. Sacrifice. Sometimes we have to do things for other people over ourselves. And that's one thing I let all my business partners know up front. And some of them didn't like it, and then we were no longer business partners. But my kids came first. Kids were number one. Everybody else, you come in line behind them, And there's a hierarchy with me. The kids come first, the significant other comes second, the family comes third, the friends come after that, people I work with, people I know, fall in line. Because to me, and that's part of probably the way I was raised, it's like the young people are your future and they come first. Compromise. Sometimes you're not going to agree 100% with another person. I've had partner relationships and all kinds of relationships, family, friends, business relationships, where you don't agree 100% with this person. So what you have to do is, if you want to maintain this relationship, you have to find common ground. You have to find a compromise. It's like, okay, what is acceptable? What is 100% not acceptable? Here are things that are 100% not acceptable to me, but this thing could be acceptable. And if that thing's also acceptable to them, you got some common ground and you can go on from there. And here's some example here of identity status crisis and commitment. Kate, Andrea, Nick, and Mark are all about to graduate from high school. Kate has considered her interests and her talents and plans to become an engineer. So, she's already got it figured out. She has narrowed her college choices to 3 schools that offer good programs in this field. Andrea knows exactly what she is going to do with her life. Her mother, a union leader at a plastics factory, has arranged for Andrea to enter an apprenticeship program there. Andrea has never considered doing anything else. Nick, on the other hand, is agonizing over his future. Should he attend a community college or join the army? He cannot decide what to do now or what he wants to do eventually. Mark still has no idea of what he wants to do, but he is not worried. He figures he can get some sort of a job and make up his mind about the future when he is ready. These 4 young people are involved in identity formation. What accounts for the differences in the way they go about it, and how will these differences affect the outcome? According to research by the psychologist James F. Marcia, these students are in 4 different stages of ego or self development, or identity statuses, which seem to be related to certain aspects of personality. So again, everybody's different. Everybody got their own personality and their own way of doing things. Through 30-minute semi-structured identity status interviews, Marcia found 4 types of identity statuses: identity achievement, foreclosure, moratorium, and identity diffusion. The 4 categories differ according to the presence or absence of crisis and commitment. The 2 elements Erickson saw as crucial to forming identity. So, these examples here are steps or ways that we go about forming our identity. And we're going to get into it a little more. Marcia defines crisis as a period of conscious decision making, and commitment as a personal investment in an occupation or system of beliefs, an ideology. So, at this stage, that's what you're doing. You're developing your own belief system, and that is going to carry you forward into life. And you might explore others later on and do other things, but, at this stage in late adolescence, this is what we're doing. He found relationships between identity status such as anxiety, self-esteem, moral reasoning, and patterns of behavior. So again, we talked about in our early teens, anxiety being a thing, and even your later teens, it steps up a little bit, because anxiety about, who am I? What am I going to do with my future? Am I going to be able to do this? And that's just normal, guys. It's part of your life. Moral reasoning, self-esteem. Again, self-esteem. If we don't have a lot of self-esteem, it's going to be harder to navigate the transition from teen to adult. And moral reasoning, you're going to have some of that. Some people never develop moral reasoning. I mean, we can looking out there in the world to see how many crooks and scam artists there are, and see that some people never develop that. But if you want to be a well-adjusted person, that is important to develop, so that you become a good citizen of the world. And if there are any patterns of behavior that are probably not, good for you, you might want to tweak those. Building on Marcia's theory, other researchers have identified other personality and family variables related to identity status. Again, everyone's different. Every person develops differently. Every family dynamic affects how people develop, because children learn what they live. Here's a thumbnail sketch of people in each of the 4 identity statuses. And let's see. Identity achievement. Crisis leading to commitment. Kate has resolved her identity crisis. During the crisis period, she devoted much thought and some emotional struggle to major issues in her life. So she thought about it, she figured out what she's going to do about it, and got it, figured out. She has made choices and expresses strong commitment to them. So if you remember, she's the one that was ready to go to college, had 3 colleges picked out and everything. So she's made her choices, and she's sticking with them. Her parents have encouraged her to make her own decisions. They have listened to her ideas and given their opinions without pressuring her to adopt them. So that's some authoritative parenting there. You listen to the kid, give your opinion, but then tell them it's their decision. It's their life. It's their decision. Kate is thoughtful, but not so introspective as to be unable to act. She has a sense of humor, functions well under stress, is capable of intimate relationships, and holds to her standards while being open to new ideas. And that's a good way for all of us to be. Research in a number of cultures has found people in this category to be more mature and more competent in relationships than people in the other 3. Let's see. Oh my gosh. These pages though. Number 2, foreclosure. Commitment without a crisis. Andrea has made commitments, not as a result of a crisis, which would involve questioning and exploring possible choices, but by accepting someone else's plans for her life. And there are people who do that. She is happy and self-assured, perhaps even smug and self-satisfied, and she becomes dogmatic when her opinions are questioned. She has close family ties, is obedient, and tends to follow a powerful leader like her mother, who accepts no disagreement. And there are people like that in the world. They accepted their family's plans for their lives 100%, the parents, and just that's what they did. And if you're happy with that, all right. Number 3, moratorium. Crisis with no commitment yet. Nick is in crisis, struggling with decisions. He is lively, talkative, self-confident, and scrupulous, but also anxious and fearful. He is close to his mother, but also resists her authority. He wants to have a girlfriend, but has not yet developed a close relationship. He will probably come out of his crisis eventually with the ability to make commitments and achieve identity. So he's just not there yet. Identity diffusion. No commitment, no crisis. Mark has not seriously considered options and has avoided commitments. He is unsure of himself and tends to be uncooperative. His parents do not discuss his future with him. They say it's up to him. People in this category tend to be unhappy. They are often lonely because they have only superficial relationships. So, again, these also can be influenced by parental influence. So again, back to that parenting style. You don't want to be an authoritarian. You don't want to be permissive. You want to be authoritative. You want to, have some discussion, but let them know it's their life. Their choices are going to make them happy or make them miserable. Okay. And so we're going to look at these typical answers to the 4 statuses and, questions that might be asked. So the question is about occupational commitment. How willing do you think you'd be to give up going into whatever you're thinking of if something better came along? And here's some answers. Identity achievement would say, well, I might but I doubt it. I can't see what something better would be for me. A person in foreclosure would say, not very willing. It's what I've always wanted to do. The folks are happy with it, and so am I. A person in moratorium would say, I guess if I knew for sure, I could answer that better. It would have to be something in the general area, something related. And a person in identity diffusion would say, oh, sure, if something better came along, I'd change just like that. So you see the differences here in the mindset. It's about the mindset where they are, you could say maturity-wise. Okay, so if the question were about ideological commitment, have you ever had any doubts about your religious beliefs? A person in identity achievement might say, yes, I started wondering whether there is a God. I've pretty much resolved that now. The way it seems to me is, and then that would be their answer. A person in foreclosure would say, no, not really. Our family is pretty much in agreement on these things. A person in moratorium would say, yes, I guess I'm going through that now. I just don't see how there can be a God and still so much evil in the world. Person in identity diffusion might say, oh, I don't know. I guess so. Everyone sees through some sort of stage like that, but it really doesn't bother me much. I figure that one religion is about as good as another. So, people are different. People are different. And they are in these different stages, or we don't even call them stages because it's, statuses. So, family and personality factors associated with adolescence in the four identity statuses, because, like I said, the family does play a part in how a person develops. So the factors of family, the identity achievement would be parents encourage autonomy and connection with teachers. Differences are explored within a context of mutuality. In a foreclosure type family, parents are overly involved with their children. Families avoid expressing differences. And in a moratorium type family, adolescents are often involved in an ambivalent struggle with parental authority. And in an identity diffusion family, parents are laissez-faire, or, they don't give a crap, in child rearing attitudes, are rejecting or not available to the children. And here's how your personality is going to form based on this. In an identity achievement family, high levels of ego development, moral reasoning, self-certainty, self-esteem, performance under stress, and intimacy. In a foreclosure type family, the personality would develop highest levels of authoritarianism and stereotypical thinking, obedience to authority, dependent relationships, low level of anxiety. In a moratorium type family, most anxious and fearful of success, high levels of ego development, moral reasoning, and self-esteem. So see, it's all different. And in a identity fusion type family, personality would develop as a mixed results with low levels of ego development, moral reasoning, cognitive complexity, and self-certainty, poor cooperative abilities. So, back to the children, learn what they live. And if you are not giving that child a good bedrock, a good foundation, being authoritative and teaching them, they're not going to have their best outcome. That's a fact of life. That's your number one job. Number one job with them peoples. These categories are not permanent, of course. They may change as people continue to develop, because we do, from the time we're a baby to the time we take our last breath, we continue to develop, if you allow yourself. From late adolescence on, more and more people are in moratorium or achievement, seeking or finding their own identity. So, more and more people They want that. They want to know who I am. There are people who go on these big retreats or big vacations around the world or whatever, figure out who I am, what I believe in. Took me a long time, for one reason or another. But I'd say in my 40s, I was relatively sure of who I was and what I believed. Still, many people, even as young adults, remain in foreclosure or diffusion. And again, like I said, that has to do with personality, how good of a foundation was laid by the people raising the child, whether they can make it or not, honestly. Although people in foreclosure seem to have made final decisions, that is often not so. When adults in midlife look back on their lives, they most commonly trace a path from foreclosure to moratorium to identity achievement. So, some people need that because they didn't get enough input growing up. They need that time to, do that for themselves. So they have to play catch up, to the people who had a good upbringing. And that's where I'm going to leave you for today. I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do, because we are moving into to a little bit more about psychology now that we're into late teens that we're talking about. A little bit from, human development into the psychology of, development. So, please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go on my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.